Hello, and welcome to another episode of Jerks at Work. We're actually on episode 20, as you can see. We've had an incredible series. This week we're doing, I would say, a very common personality type that I've run into over the years, the pessimist. They always see the worst. They always think about what the worst possible thing is that could happen, and they are real momentum killers. So let's talk about these people today. And before we get into that, just look at everything that lays ahead. Next week we'll be doing the bottleneck. Then we have the always busy do nothing, the meeting monster, who creates meeting madness. I mean, these are all real people that are jerks at work. And Terry and I've worked with all of them, quite honestly, at one
Yes.
time or another. And so who is this pessimist? I'm sure you've worked with one of them. They are just chronically negative. They're always protecting themselves by focusing on the worst outcome and, doing the risk avoidance by, trying to shut down anything that could cause them to in any way look bad or have to go through any kind of a failure. And they're masters of phrases like, oh, look, we've done that before. It could never work. There's just too many unknowns. We're not ready to tackle that right now. We don't have any bandwidth. It sounds great in theory. These are classic sound bites you hear from these people, and they'll always bring up the past and some negative thing that happened. And they're the ultimate buzzkill, really. They stop all the momentum, Tara?
Yeah. It's very frustrating too, because it kills creativity because people are really
Does.
kind of thinking they're in this mode of trying to toss out ideas. And then you've got this person that's just being negative and they're constantly kind of poo-pooing all over everybody's ideas,
Yeah.
just constantly saying, oh, we've tried that before. That won't work because of this. And, it's a new day. So some things that didn't work in the past could possibly work now if you change your perspective on it. Having a more positive outlook sometimes just changes how things come out. So having this person around that's constantly being negative, that always has a no as their answer, you really do want to squash that, because it just kills the vibe in the room where people are really genuinely trying to come up with solutions. They're not trying to come up with a solution. They're just being negative about everybody else's solutions.
Yeah. That is who they are, no doubt about it. They resist
Yeah.
any kind of change or any sense of, risk and responsibility. And so how do you handle these people? If you're a boss, you do have to ask for risks and opportunities and focus on the alternatives. We used to go to the board and put all the pluses and minuses down. Well, let's talk about this. There are some negatives. There are negatives with everything. So we'd have the negative column, we'd have the plus column, and we would just put the pluses and negatives together. And we'd always come up in general with a lot more pluses. And kind of that group momentum focusing on the pluses would tend to box these folks into a corner.
Yeah.
And we could overcome their resistance by showing that this was actually overall a very good idea and say, yes, there are negatives. Appreciate you adding those to the board. But look at all these positives. Is there any reason we shouldn't do this? And how do we limit the risk? So I think that worked very, very effectively. What do you think, Tara?
Yeah, I think, you really do have to box these people in so that they're not the leading voice in the room. You can acknowledge their concerns, and they may have legitimate reasons, right, for why they're saying their answers might actually be legitimate reasons why, this may fail or it is too risky. But sometimes you have to move forward anyway. You don't want to fall into that negativity trap. You don't want to focus on the what ifs, right? So they're constantly with the what ifs. You really do want to come back to how to solve the problem and not just focusing on what won't work. Because ultimately, you're trying to get to a solution that has an acceptable amount of risk, right? Because you can't avoid all risk. And you do know that it's a possibility that it might fail. Sometimes
Yep.
you have to step out on that ledge and take the risk and take the failure so that you can learn something new. You really
Yeah.
do have to reframe how you see failure and risk, because
Organizations
every
have to
time,
evolve.
yeah,
Organizations have to evolve. And it's another way to box them in is like, we have to
yeah,
evolve. Here's what's happening. What do you recommend? So come up with a solution then for us. Since you say this
yeah,
isn't good, give us one where there's more positives than negatives. and you box them in that way. Oh, what'd I do? I hit something. But anyway, I love the drawings, the slide here, his coffee mug. I told you so. There's
Yeah.
so like
Yeah.
that. I told you it never happened. Management would never
Yeah.
approve it. I told you, blah, blah, blah. They're the classic. I knew that in advance. I told you, I warned you, you didn't listen. And of
Yeah.
course, if you follow their negativity, you end up not on the left, but on the right side with everything crashing down as all the negatives go up.
Yeah.
You
You
know,
can't be afraid to grow and to learn. And part of that process, part of that cycle of learning is failure.
oh,
So
yes.
if you make a mistake or you choose poorly, we decide as a group we're going to do something, it doesn't work. That's not always a bad thing. Sometimes it's a great way to learn and to grow and to improve. But if you stay kind of in this stalemate of that's too risky, that won't ever work, we've tried that, if you stay in that space, you never get to try anything new. And if you're
Can't
always
innovate.
for trying things that you've already tried before or staying in that safe zone, it's really hard for you to mature as an organization. So
Yeah,
you
it's
can't let
always,
these pessimists rule the roost. You really do have to kind of box them in, like Frank was saying earlier, and
yeah.
get them to a place where they can start thinking about solutions and not thinking about why this won't work.
And failure, like you say, is very important. You can't do innovation unless you're willing to fail. And so that old thing, fail fast, often, and cheap, is the way to go.
Yes.
Because something may be too risky. Maybe you want to try something small and learn from it. It's quite possible. But
Yeah.
what don't you do? And now he's gotten a lot of power, as you could see. He's put every idea in the idea cemetery. He's sitting there as the chief reasons officer. He has the reasons why everything couldn't work. Do not proceed. Risk of failure
Yeah.
50%, risk of success 80. Do not proceed. The chief reasons officer. This is great.
Yeah.
But
This
anyway,
is great because they are missing the point that this risk of failure 15%, but what about all the 85% that this might work?
hmm
What happens if we just step out there and try? What happens if we stumble upon something good because we just gave it a try? It's not
right.
the end of the world to fail. And I think this pessimist has failed enough that they just automatically assume failure and they don't expect to succeed. They don't expect to win. And so you really have to coax them along to get them to see that life is not about just being safe and not taking any risks. You're going to have to take some risks in life. You can't just stay behind with every safe option waiting for 100% success. You're not going to have life that way. And so you've really got to kind of coax this person because it's baked into their personality. So this person isn't just pessimist at work, they're a pessimist everywhere they go. It is
Yeah.
literally the lens through which they see life.
It
So you're
protects them.
dealing with more than just, a opinion of somebody. This is a personality that you really do have to address. And hopefully you can coax that person out of this pessimism into a point where they're able to at least take some risks. It won't happen overnight. You'll have to really work with this person to try to get them to see failure in a different way. But you just you don't want to let this continue because you will end up with an idea cemetery where everything just, this person will just kill off every great idea and never let anything proceed.
Well, if
They
they
will
win, your
slow things
organization
down
dies.
completely.
It's that
Absolutely.
simple.
Yeah.
As a boss, you shouldn't let them dominate discussions. Just don't do it. Don't let them have, be the constant criticizer without proposing alternatives. Create those norms that, if you're going to bring up a negative, you got to bring up a positive too, or try to, because you can't be
Yeah.
just bringing negatives. So you got to create norms, you know.
Yeah.
Don't allow avoiding risk to become the culture because it will be the death of the place. You'll move into the cemetery along
Absolutely.
with the ideas. And, if your peer don't accept it, doesn't work as an answer, box them in, drive them into that conversation about positives
Mhm.
and negatives. And Don't confuse caution with wisdom. I remember there was one guy who was negative, and the boss loved getting away with not doing stuff. Love this guy because he always had 10 reasons why they shouldn't do something. And that played right into the boss's hand. That person didn't last that long anyway. It didn't ultimately matter. But,
Yeah.
they could.
I've seen a really good way to kind of box this person in by setting the tone for the meeting right up at the start as we're going to toss out ideas. No idea is a bad idea. We're not going to critique any ideas in this meeting. This is
Yeah,
an idea generation meeting. And so
that's
you
good.
kind of set the stage for that right up front and you kill all of the negativity and you say, budget's no option. You have unlimited funds, you have unlimited resources. It's almost like you're setting the stage for this is a dream world. If we
Yeah.
had a dream
Real
scenario, what
brainstorming.
would
Yeah.
we do? Yeah. And you
Yeah.
basically neutralize the pessimist right from the start because they don't have a chance to kind of kill every idea that's getting thrown out there. And it also causes people to dream a little bit too big, right? So you don't have unlimited funds and resources, but sometimes you can hear an idea and somebody else can tweak the idea and you can get to something that you can actually use.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a great way to kind of box that person in so they don't have the opportunity to be the pessimist.
It's important to fill the top of the innovation funnel. You got to have every idea up there because you never know which one is going to be good when you do start weighing the pluses and minuses. But I really like this too, the pessimist graveyard, the idea cemetery.
Yeah.
What is all the collateral damage? Innovation, you just didn't really get anything done. You've slowed growth. You've destroyed team
Mhm.
morale. People are a lot less engaged. The dream team was just a picture on the wall. They're gone. No competitive advantage. Customers aren't delighted. It's just, they are a disaster. There's no question.
Yeah.
They take your business to the cemetery.
It's very toxic. This pessimist attitude really is toxic and it will spread. That negativity will spread throughout the organization. And then your whole organization becomes toxic, which you don't want. You don't want people that are generally bright, sunny people. So I'm one of those generally bright, sunny people. When I'm in a situation like this, it really causes me to pull back because I don't like negativity. There are
Yeah.
some people that thrive in negativity, but you've got people in your organization that don't. And this will run that person away. They will avoid the pessimists like the plague and not include them. And that just causes a whole different set of bottlenecks. And we'll talk next week about the bottleneck, but
Yeah.
it just causes so many problems in your organization when you start having to maneuver around people and get things done. It just slows things down to a pace that it doesn't have to be.
Well, these people can do well. Companies all have a cycle. There's an up cycle, you're peaking, you come down because people don't start getting a lot done. Then maybe there's a crisis or you've got to react, and suddenly people come together and they start creating and they start taking some risk, and then the company does better again. And so I found these people just can exist up here where it's really going well. And one company I was at, company was doing great. Every year the numbers were fantastic, and it became, pass go collect $200. People wanted their bonus, so they were happy to listen to reasons why they didn't have to take any big risks because they wanted to get paid. And these people are boxed out when the company is not doing as well, and they must make change. Like when the
Yeah.
market is moving ahead around them and they've fallen behind, they've got to drive it. These people don't really get a good reception. And so I do think they tie into the life cycle of the place. They can be more dominant at certain times than others, you know?
Yeah.
But anyway, next week we have another fun one here on episode 21, The Bottleneck. This is a little bit different than the information hoarder. These people have some authority and they get to hold stuff up. So it's different. They are real. They do exist, and they have their own reason for wanting to just stop things. So I
Yeah.
hope you can join us. We're here every Wednesday, 3 o'clock, new show. So we're moving on to episode 21. Hope you're enjoying.